And then on the other side, there was a loser in this game, Ole Miss, but everything that you want is still in front of you.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you have a pretty good slate ahead. We talked about Ole Miss at the beginning of the year, like can they be this undefeated team? Now they come off of this, and it's like, okay, well, what other games could they potentially drop? We tiered them out at the beginning of the year as a top tier team. What tier do you feel like Ole Miss is in the SEC now?
Yeah, I mean, when I think about if to answer that question, I would say like that championship tier, like national championship SEC championship tier. To me, Ole Miss jumped one down. So if they were in the one tier, I'm going to put them in the two tier. My one tier has got Bama, it's got Georgia, it's got Tennessee, and my two tier in Texas is my one tier as well. My two tier has Missouri and now Ole Miss.
Okay.
Bama jumped to the one tier recently, but like back to Ole Miss, them going down to me is purely because this was their first big test. Wanted to see more on the offensive side. Jackson Dart, I think, only had 1 or 2 touchdowns in the game, but I just, based upon even just when I look at what they were able to do defensively all season, letting this team, letting Brock Vandagriff have a really good game for his standards compared to their average when it comes to passing yards allowed, kind of puts Ole Miss down. They have an opportunity to get back up. And when they have this game next week against South Carolina, a team that Kentucky lost to, right? As well as other games this season for them, but they still have more to prove. And the reason that is, and I'm going as a point here, but the reason that is because I believe most people for Ole Miss felt like, okay, your schedule is very backloaded. Number one. You got the monkey off your back. You got a New Year's 6 win last year. You return a great team, but you haven't proven yet you can beat the Georgias. So if you haven't proven you can't beat the Georgias, losing to Kentucky doesn't, for me, keep you in that championship tier. If Kentucky continues to have a strong season, that changes. If Ole Miss continues to look strong against inferior opponents and they handle business against Georgia, or they win that game, they're back in that championship tier for me.
Yeah. So, without being too critical of Ole Miss, like to me, they're 0-1 in games that matter to their resume. Like they've played 4 games this year against teams that, like, if you lose, it matters. Sure. But when we're looking down the end and they're picking the teams to be in the playoffs, no one's looking at what you did against Wake Forest. They want to know what you did in SEC games. And I don't even think that this one initially was one that was supposed to be at that point, right? Like they're looking ahead to those Texas Oklahoma games in the future that they're going to have. And, I think that they dropped a tier for me as well, because I just can't say that the offense was able to fire on all cylinders. Now, Kentucky defense, I'll give them credit. I'll give Oklahoma or Ole Miss a little bit of credit against this Kentucky defense because they are tough and they were still able to drive down initially and score. We know that they have that. But like you mentioned it, Kentucky's offense, which has struggled all year, you made them look like they had they have it. So if you're going to do that and you're playing, LSU, I think you're going to get diced up by someone like Nussmeier if you're doing it to someone like, Brock Vandagriff.
Exactly. And that's where, like, to get into that higher tier, show me more against South Carolina defensively, show me more against LSU offensively, like, which should be easy with LSU's defense and where they rank in the SEC. For South Carolina, this is another great defensive test for you. Like we've seen what they can do this season. Show me more in that game. You're going to probably face a stronger rushing offense in that game as well with South Carolina. So that's kind of where I think about when I think about Ole Miss, like what they can do to get back up to that championship class. The schedule's favorable. We've talked about it. I think if you don't think the schedule's favorable, we can agree to disagree. But the schedule's very favorable. You got Oklahoma. That's a little tougher game. LSU could be tough. SC could be tough, but you're only playing one of the 4 championship class teams. Georgia does not afford that same luxury. Oklahoma is not afforded that same luxury. Alabama is not afforded that same luxury. So take advantage, and you got to win with some style points to me. So that's what I need to see from the kind of move up a class.
Yeah, I think they'll need to step up defensively because you are going to play teams like Georgia who, if you let them, they can score points. We saw them score against Alabama late. Trey Amos in coverage was a little bit of a liability, giving up those 2 penalties, getting diced up out there. So you got to play a clean game once you're starting to get tested by receivers who are athletes, top tier athletes, and not when you're winning games by 30 or 40 points. You got to have that composure and not let them get those easy first downs. So for Ole Miss, the path forward is fine. They're going to play Florida. They're going to play Arkansas. They're going to play Mississippi State. They're going to be fine.
Yep.
I just think they drop down a little bit for me.
Yeah.
So they have a huge statement game against South Carolina coming up. If they can win that game, like you mentioned, with some style points, they're back. It sucks that they lost this game at home, though.
It does. Really does. The home loss is tough. And I mean, if you look straight box score, it's like Trey Harris had a good game. So build on that, right? 1 touchdown, over 100 yards. When you think about, what we saw defensively, they were able to force Kentucky to have to kick field goals. So just more on the offensive side and win with style points in these games, like you have proven to do, to validate those first couple tune-up games on the schedule. So we'll see what goes on in Oxford, but again, everything's still in front of them. There's a couple teams that are trying to vie for that SEC championship that have one SEC loss, so they're in a position now where they're kind of keep winning, hope that teams like Tennessee and Missouri lose, right? So it should be interesting for them out there in Oxford.